Hey guys, I found this clip from RTAmerica from April 4th, and I thought it was interesting because they have a Fox News contributor on there discussing it from the conservative side. And so let's go ahead and start the tape, and then I'll stop it and we'll discuss it. Here we go.
Allowed to stand your ground. Stephen Crowder, Fox News contributor, joins me now. Welcome, Stephen. So critics say that this law, Stand Your Ground, encourages vigilante-style justice. In this case, Zimmerman, he wasn't a police officer. He was a self-proclaimed neighborhood watchman. So this law gives people the right to shoot and kill people.
So that was her first statement, and she's saying it encourages vigilantism, which it's very apparent that she's never read the law, she's never studied what it means, and she's only heard from the most liberal people their opinion of what it means. And basically what she thinks it says is that if, for example, here I live in Florida, if I have a disagreement with my neighbor and I feel threatened, like we're having an argument and it gets a little loud, I can just pull out my gun and shoot him in the head and say, that's stand your ground. Well, I was nervous. He was making me nervous. He reached in his pocket. I thought maybe he might have a gun. So, I don't expect these people to have a clue, and I don't expect them to be fair and honest. But it's only fair that I should bring out the facts and point it out that they're full of crap.
Well, firstly, do you guys have some kind of a scoop on the Trayvon story that I'm not aware of yet?
I love it. This is the question I wanted to ask for the longest time. The entire media, the liberal media, completely assumed that they had all the facts on the case, and they kept telling us what the case meant and what stand your ground meant, and they were totally wrong. They don't understand what stand your ground is. They don't understand the law. They don't have a clue about the case, and even to this day they're still misinformed.
Because last I heard, we haven't seen the case and we don't know what's happened, and Zimmerman hasn't been convicted.
Well, it's hard to know what happened when he's not even arrested.
And that's another sign of complete ignorance. Let's move that one notch. This is stupidity. How is it going to help the case to have George arrested? How is it that they're going to find more facts that he's arrested rather than if they just investigate? For example, if they go to the scene and they gather all the information and they talk to all the witnesses and they gather all the facts together, and later on they decide that George is guilty, can they arrest him then? Oh, no, it would be too late, right? So, I mean, what is her point? Can't they gather the information before an arrest? Now, this is the point that I need to make to her and to everybody else. Stand your ground says no arrest. Is that clear enough? Is that difficult for the liberal brain to wrap around? Because that just bugs me to no end. These people are, they're ignorant of the law, but then when you point out the law, then they become stupid. Because if you tell them the law and they know the law, but they refuse to accept it, and they still keep saying the same thing over and over again, then that becomes insanity. Let's continue.
No, he's not been arrested yet. I don't
figure out what happened.
Arrested if they were in fact offended.
I think the argument that people want this to be brought to justice is that he should be put on trial, that charges should be filed again.
No, that's not how Stand Your Ground works. There is no trial. There is no arrest. There is nothing in Stand Your Ground. The way Stand Your Ground works, and I'm going to say this again, and I'll probably say it again and again. The way it works is the police come and investigate. Then they take all the evidence that they gather and they bring it to the DA's office. And then the DA's office looks at it and says yay or nay on the arrest. That's the way it works. And the reason for that is the DA's office has to decide how much money they have to spend for the year on criminal investigations. It also allows them to look at the case and say, hey, look, we can't even there's no way this case is going to come to fruition. Why are we going to drag these people through this case? And we know it's impossible for us to win a conviction. Why would they do it? That's why the DA's office backed off and said, there's no way we're going to arrest him. That's why the race baiters and Obama stepped in and stirred the stink and then went to the state and said, you need to do something. And then the governor, of course, chose Miss Corey to be the special prosecutor outside the law, because, of course, the law says the DA's office gets the last word on whether a case is going to come to trial or not. So when they overrode the DA's office, they broke the law. When they arrested George, they broke stand your ground law, because the law says no arrests. And if you don't believe me, go read the stand your ground law. Go to Google and type in stand your ground Florida law, and you will see exactly what the law says. And it says no arrest. No arrest.
And let the court or let a judge decide whether or not he's guilty.
That's exactly what happens. If the police decide to arrest him, then it goes to the judge, and then the judge gets to decide whether it's a stand your ground case. There's several layers that protect the innocent victim, like George. And the layers are, first we run it through the DA's office. If the DA's office decides to bring it to trial, if they decide to run it through a court, see, now the DA's office is the first stop. If the DA's office says, no, that's it, it's a dead case, done, throw it out. And that's what happened in this case. So the fact that it's even still alive is outside the law. The second level is the judge. So if the DA's office says, yes, we're going to have a trial, then it goes to the judge. Then George's lawyer would, at that point, go to the judge with a motion and say, this was self-defense, and here's why. The judge then weighs the case on a scale. He puts all the evidence on the scale. All the evidence for George on one side, all the evidence against George on the other side. If the scale tilts ever so slightly one way or the other, that's the way the judge goes. So if the judge says there's just a hair of evidence more towards a conviction, that doesn't mean that there's enough for a conviction, because you need quite a bit of a higher level. Just tipping the balance is preponderance of the evidence. So that's the level that the judge has to meet in order to continue the case or to kill the case. If the judge decides the case should continue, then there's still one more opportunity for stand your ground to be claimed, and that is to the jury. The judge, at that point, the lawyer would go to the jury and seek stand your ground defense. Again, the jury at that point will decide the case, that stand your ground case, completely separate of all the other facts. Any lies that George told about money or any of that cannot even be brought into the case. Nothing about his truthfulness will ever see the light of day in that case, ever. So the jury will hear the evidence, and they have to decide whether George was in fear for his life when he was on the ground getting his head bashed in. And if they say, yes, he was in fear for his life, that's the end of the case. So there's 3 opportunities for George to win stand your ground. He already won the first one. When the DA threw it out, that was it. That's the end of the case. So the state came and picked it back up and started over again. That was illegal. That broke the law. Let's continue.
But that's not really the argument people are bringing here. Just like you guys decided to show the picture of Trayvon Martin, I don't know why the picture is several years old, whereas the Zimmerman picture is only his mugshot. This man hasn't seen a trial. He's been convicted guilty by the American public. You've had Spike Lee and Roseanne Barr publicly tweeting his address. This is not a man who people want to see brought to justice. We don't know what's happened. Listen, I don't know anything about Mr. Zimmerman. I don't know if he was defending himself. We don't know that he shot Trayvon in the...
So now we have the information. We have all the evidence. We know that Trayvon was on top of him banging his head. Back then they were telling us, we had this mental image that George was chasing this kid down, hunting him down like a rabid dog and shooting him in the street.
We don't know what's happened. Listen, I don't know anything about Mr. Zimmerman. I don't know if he was defending himself. We don't know that he shot Trayvon in the back while he was running away. Let's assume for...
So he didn't even know how George got shot, or Trayvon got shot. They didn't even know. They were talking like he got shot in the back. It's crazy stuff.
Second, that we do have all of the facts. He did shoot Trayvon while he was running away in the back. That doesn't really mean that he's a racist. We don't really know enough about that. And I think to confuse the stand your ground law with the Castle Doctrine, too, is done in that report isn't entirely accurate. I do think what's very, very important here, too, is we do talk about the Florida, I guess, acceptable homicides, as you guys call them, which would really be shooting and self-defense. What's happened to the Florida total violent crime rate since then, or during that same time?
This is a good question, because we all know that during the period since Stand Your Ground has passed, criminals are more and more afraid to meet up with their victims. You know, in the old days when we didn't have Stand Your Ground, you would have car robberies. People would jump in your car, or they would rob you on the streets and stuff. Now they're more concerned about that. Less and less do you see that. Now what we see is if they go into a house, they want to make sure that there's nobody there. So they'll come and knock on the door. Oh, no one's home. Now they'll go in because they know these people have guns. They don't want to get shot. They're not doing these car robberies anymore because you never know if someone's going to pull a gun out of their glove box and blow your brains out. So the criminals have wised up. This happened back in '93 after Clinton got elected, and he was working on passing gun laws. One of them was the assault rifle ban, and it forced people to run out and buy guns and ammo, lots and lots of guns and ammo, and it was all over the media that people were buying these guns. And after that happened, the criminals woke up, and little by little, the crime rate dropped dramatically. So I should say, and I should give the Democrats a great big pat on the back for their ability to reduce crime simply by getting more people to buy guns. When they talk about gun control and taking away guns, more people buy them, and that reduces crime. So thank you very much, Obama and Clinton, for reducing our crime rate by talking about gun control and getting more people to buy guns. Thank you.
You know, what I do know is also what has increased was so-called justifiable homicide.
So he's saying crime overall has dropped dramatically in Florida, but she's going to say, well, yeah, but so has justifiable homicide. Well, good. That's the whole point. We wanted more people that were justified in the use of deadly force to go free. So, yeah, it increased. It went from 12 to 36 in the entire year. Ooh, big increase. But we're thankful. We like that. This is whenever we get more people defending themselves and stopping criminals from killing them, the better it is. So we're happy about the increase in that. She seems to be angry that more people are using guns to defend themselves.
In cases where you're allowed to kill somebody. And
no, it's not where you're allowed to kill somebody. It's where you're allowed to defend yourself. And that's the perfect point here. If you're a criminal, the thing that scares you the most, and statistically the thing that would scare them the most, is an unarmed citizen who would be a victim all of a sudden is now armed. This idea that victims shouldn't be able to defend themselves, I think is ridiculous. And of course, these people aren't necessarily shooting to try and kill someone. I think people need to understand this dynamic here. The same thing with Mr. Zimmerman. I don't know. I haven't seen the ballistics yet. But when I have a weapon, and most people have weapons, they buy self-defense rounds, okay? A self-defense round is not designed to kill. As a matter of fact, a round you would use to hunt would be a full metal jacket. Is designed to pierce organs and kill whatever it is that you're hunting. A self-defense round is used to enter the body cavity and expand, causing more instant central nervous system damage to stop the assailant. You aren't shooting to kill, you're shooting to stop.
Yeah, well, here's where I disagree with him. I personally believe that a hollow point does a lot more damage, and you're much more likely to die from a hollow point than you are from a full metal jacket. A full metal jacket will go in one side and out the other. In most cases, won't even leave a major scar. It just goes right on through, and if it doesn't hit any vital organs, you're not going to have a problem. I mean, you might have some bleeding. A small hole will obviously not kill you if you can stop the bleeding. So for him to say that a hollow point is actually a non-lethal round, I disagree. And I also disagree with the thought that when you're fighting for your life or you're trying to defend your life, you're thinking about whether you're going to kill the guy or not, because I believe that's not even in your mind. The only thing you're thinking of is trying to survive. And if it turns out that the other guy dies, that's not a problem for you or anyone else that's in that position. You're not concerning yourself. You got to imagine, put yourself in their shoes. You're on the ground. You're George. You're on the ground. You're getting your head bashed in. What's going through your mind? Oh my God, this poor kid. I'm going to shoot this kid, and he's got a family and a mom and a dad and a sister and a cousin and all this stuff. No, that's not what you're thinking. If you're thinking anything, you're thinking, my wife. What am I going to do? How's my wife going to get along? How are my children going to get along? How is my family going to feel when I'm dead? That's what's going to be going through your mind, and how to stop that. Also, what would be going through my mind is, this guy put himself in this position. He's on top of me, and he's trying to kill me. So I really have lost my major humanity for this person. I mean, it would be wonderful I could stop him from killing me and not kill him. That would be nice. But that's not entering my mind.
Listen, shooting somebody.
If you shoot somebody at point blank, you're going to kill them, most likely.
And there she is. She's making assumptions. Thousands and thousands of people get shot that don't die. Thousands. It's just crazy to even assume that just because you get shot at point blank, you're going to die. It's just not true. And it depends on the caliber of the gun. It depends on the location of the shot. It's just so many people get shot every day that don't die. I mean, look at all the people in the Aurora shooting. They got shot and didn't die. Even close range, short range, it doesn't matter. Believe me, and this lady obviously doesn't know about guns. If you get hit by a bullet, it doesn't matter if the bullet's 50 feet away, if the shooter's 50 feet away or 5 inches away. It makes no difference at all. None. When the bullet hits, it's going to make some major damage. And if it goes into a major organ, you're going to die. That's just the way it is. Or if it rips through an artery that's a major artery, you're gonna bleed out.
If you're going to shoot them in the head or shoot them in the chest, you're going to kill them, and that would be your
firstly,
intent.
you would never shoot in the head. Anyone who's taken a single concealed carry handgun license will know you never aim for the head. You always aim for body mass. So that's another myth that you could aim.
He's right about that, and it's not about whether the person should be trying to save the life of their attacker. It's because it's a lot easier to hit center mass, and you're less likely to miss than if you aim at the head. If you aim at the head, it's a small target. You can miss. And if you miss, in some cases, especially semi-automatics, guns jam. So sometimes you only have one bullet to shoot. In the case of George, I believe his gun did jam, or for some reason, he was only able to get out one bullet. Because if it were me, and I were in his position, I think Trayvon would have been a lot heavier being carried out of there with all the lead that he would have had in him if it were me, because I would have got all my rounds into him, or at least half of them.
Aim for the heads or aim for the legs that we get from video games in Hollywood. Never. You aim for body mass, and whatever you aim your gun at, you better be damn well sure that you are prepared, ready, and justified to shoot. That is what you are taught. But the act of shooting somebody is not an immoral act. So that's why I think it's important to look at total violent crime rates in Florida versus these, I guess, justifiable homicide, which is the term that you are using. I can shoot somebody to steal his wallet and kill him and leave him in the street, or I can shoot somebody to prevent a rape and murder. Just like money is amoral. You can take $100 and donate it to a charity, or you can take $100 and go buy some drugs off the street. It really depends on your worldview. Would you rather see headlines that read victim shot and tossed in a gutter, or woman raped and left in an alleyway? Or would you rather read a headline that reads would-be victim was armed and managed to defend himself from assailant, get away safely?
But in this case, the victim wasn't armed. He was holding a bag of Skittles and an Arizona iced tea. So in this case,
and there's another fallacy, miscalculation there. They keep saying that Trayvon wasn't armed. I'm wondering, how did he buy the Skittles? How did he buy the can of soda? He didn't have arms? I mean, people die regularly by blunt trauma. Blunt trauma doesn't include a gun. It includes people using their fists, their elbows, their knees, their shoulders, every part of their body, or whatever else they could just happen to find. A stick, a rock. I mean, in most areas you can find a rock. You can find something hard to hit somebody with. I mean, if Trayvon had wanted, if he had walked over, he disappeared for a few minutes. So he could have gone and got any kind of weapon. George had no way of knowing what kind of weapon he had. Even a rock, even a nice hand-sized rock would have been enough to kill George very quickly. But then when he started using the sidewalk instead of a rock, that's the same thing. It's just as bad. It's actually worse because you're using all the weight of the head to speed up the blow. Much more dangerous.
This is a tragic headline. This is a headline that I don't want to read either.
We were just talking about the law. We weren't talking about Trayvon. We were talking about stand your ground law. So to tie that to the Trayvon case, now if we're talking about Trayvon, listen, I don't know. I said, I can't speak for Mr. Zimmerman. I don't know what happened. He may be right. He may be completely wrong. But that doesn't mean that the stand your ground law or the castle laws you would have in Texas, two which are very different things, is inherently wrong. It depends on what we want to discuss. If we want to discuss the details of the Zimmerman Trayvon case, well, we don't have them yet.
We don't, and I agree with you. We don't have details because he wasn't arrested. We don't know.
So she keeps saying that. Because he wasn't arrested, it's impossible for us to know the facts. I guess all the crimes in the world that have happened where there was an arrest, where they didn't actually catch the guy, maybe they even know who he was, but they never caught him, then we could never find out the facts. We could never find out, like the guy that went into the house and killed the woman and the children, and then he escaped and he took her car, and they found out, they knew who he was, but they couldn't catch him. That case never got solved, right? Because there was no arrest. No, that's not true at all. And the opinion that the fact that he didn't get arrested meant that there would be no justice, how ridiculous. I mean, justice continues the wheels of justice continue regardless of an arrest. That you don't require an arrest. And like I said before, the law says no arrest. She doesn't understand stand your ground. If she read stand your ground, the word arrest appears right in it, and it says no arrest.
Well, there's a lot of conflicting reports, a lot of conflicting evidence. I don't know for sure. You don't know for sure. There's a lot of unknowns at this point because a lot of people say it's due to the fact that he wasn't arrested and they just took at face value the fact that he acted in self-defense, and we don't know that. Possibly he did, possibly he didn't. We don't know that, but.
So now she's saying that we don't know that, but throughout the entire time, she's saying that he needs to be arrested. So if you don't have any evidence that suggests that George was doing something wrong, and all the evidence that the police have say that he was doing the right thing, then either the police are right because they have all the information, and you're wrong because you have none of it, or the police are racist pigs that don't care about black people, and they don't. Any time a black person gets killed, they're going to be happy. That's her opinion. That's the opinion of the race baiters, all the people in Congress, all the black caucus that keep saying things like Trayvon was shot while black, while walking through a gated community. No, Trayvon was shot while beating the crap out of the night watchman.
One of the more controversial things, Stephen, about this law is that it's a spin-off of the Castle Doctrine, which is a little bit more broad because in that case, if somebody comes into your home, okay, somebody's clearly in your home where you live, your place, so you can defend yourself. Clearly, that person shouldn't be there. But the stand your ground law allows you to take your gun and patrol neighborhoods theoretically and shoot somebody in a public place.
No, it doesn't.
In a public place.
That is.
I hope now he's going to tell her what stand your ground means, because clearly she doesn't have the slightest clue. If I were somebody, you can look at her picture there and you see it says RT Studios, Washington, D.C. So she's in the country. She's probably an American. So you would think she knows this stuff. This is just proof of our dumbed down society, that they don't understand the Second Amendment. They don't understand the laws, and they're not even interested in looking. I have these discussions, these debates on YouTube all the time, people in my comment section, and they keep going on and on and on about Trayvon's rights, and George got out of the car when the police told him not to, and Lala just goes on and on. It's like they don't think that George should have any rights. that only Trayvon had rights that night. And Trayvon's right was to beat the hell out of anybody who happened to be following him. So let's continue with this fun stuff.
Not accurate. The stand your ground law does not allow someone to buy a gun and patrol neighborhoods with his gun. The fact that Zimmerman had a concealed handgun carry license, if he did, is not the same as him being part of a neighborhood watch. As a matter of fact, most neighborhood watches do not allow their members to hold guns. The stand your ground law does not say you can run around shooting people. That is not what it says. The stand your ground law says that if you are in a lethal or possibly deadly situation, you do not have to flee and put yourself in a position of being even more of a victim. You are allowed to defend yourself.
But what the law also says, Stephen, is that it doesn't require the person to remove themselves from a dangerous situation. And I would think, I mean, I wouldn't argue that self-defense is a bad thing, but I would think that it should be a last resort that shooting somebody.
And here's where we keep running into the wall. I mean, these people have no sense. Just put yourself in the situation of somebody's come up to you, you're in your car, because this has been an argument, a lot of people brought this up. You're in your car, a guy walks up to you, he's got a knife and he's robbing you. You can step on the gas pedal and get away. Or if he has a gun, you step on the gas pedal, he might shoot you in the back of the head. So her opinion is that it's important that people make that clarification and make a decision properly based on the information they have. So, you know, under our law, we say if a guy raises his arm to you with a knife in it and threatens to kill you, that you have the right to stay alive. So if you're in that car, you step on the gas pedal, you get away, good. No problem. Everything's good. There's no cops. But let's say that the guy has a gun. Or let's say you don't have it in gear. The car's not even started. Now it gives this guy plenty of time to stab you and kill you. The whole point of Stand Your Ground was so that this wouldn't even come to trial. There should be no trial at any time when a person is defending themselves, when their life is in danger. So the way we find out if somebody has a right to defend their life is we put it before people who would be reasonable and say, if you were in this situation, what would you do? And we have three sets of people that go through this. First set of people is the DA's office. They look at it and say, a reasonable person would definitely defend their life in this situation. So we went through that. The DA's office said, yay, definitely a reasonable person would defend their life. So the next step would be a judge would look at it and say yay or nay. And then after that, the jury would say yay or nay. Now, if we get to the point where the jury says, no, this is not a stand your ground case, it's still self-defense. And the jury still has to hear the case, and the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, which is a very high standard, it's the highest standard. They have to prove that George was not fearing for his life when Trayvon was beating him and had his head on the concrete. That would be the requirements of the state to get a conviction. So George has 3 opportunities for stand your ground. One of them he's already passed. He's already got the stand your ground immunity from the DA's office. So the next one would be the judge, and the one after that, if the judge denies it, would go to the jury, and the jury can, at that point, decide it. And of course, stand your ground is on a preponderance of the evidence. And the reason we do that is because preponderance means a 50-50. If the judge looks at the case and says that the judge looks at it and says there's 50% chance that George is telling the truth and 50% chance that he's lying, well, then there is no preponderance of the evidence on either side. So he really needs to get a tilt one way or the other. When the judge tilts it towards George and says George was, 49.9% of our evidence suggests George was wrong, and 50.1% says George is innocent, then the judge has to stand your ground. And the reason we do that is because it's even harder to get a conviction with the higher standard. So if you've got the low standard of preponderance of the evidence and you can't get a conviction from the judge on that, if you can't get the judge to agree on that, then obviously you're not going to be able to move it up to the higher standard and get a conviction. So then it goes to the jury, and the jury makes the decision on the preponderance of the evidence. They don't have to be absolute. Just 50-50, a little over. Just tilt it. And if the jury says, no, this isn't a stand your ground case, it's still, like I said, we can still go to self-defense, and at that point the state has to prove. This is where the state has to prove. Stand your ground is where the defendant proves that he was standing his ground. But once all the stand your ground possibilities have been ruled out and we're down to that's gone, then it goes to the state proving beyond a reasonable doubt that George was not fearing for his life when Trayvon was beating his head into the concrete. So that's impossible, because how do you prove that somebody was not fearing for their life reasonably when their head was getting bounced on the concrete?
Should be a last resort, and you should try to flee or do something else, not resort to pulling the trigger.
Well, who's to say it isn't? And that's why the law was created, because you can't determine whether it was a last resort or not. You can determine if this person was justified in using lethal or deadly force. And it's not just, as the report said, if you claim self-defense, you're off the hook. That also is not true. So we need to dispel these two myths here about stand your ground law. It is not allowing people to strap themselves with a gun and go around shooting people who they believe to be criminals. That is not allowed, and you do not get off the hook by claiming self-defense. It has to be proven that you were defending yourself and that your actions were justified, and I think that's a good law.
All right, Stephen. Glad to have you on for the debate. That was Stephen Crowder, Fox News.
So that's basically, I like that they had two people on there. I like that they had 2 points of view, because typically they just have their one personal point of view. But this guy, like I said, and you can review it, I was basically saying that he's right about most things. These guys didn't have, neither one of them had the facts of the case at the time that they were making this video. So as far as Trayvon's shooting was concerned, they were still talking about Trayvon getting shot in the back while he was running away. I mean, crazy stuff. So thanks a lot for listening, guys. Talk to you later.